Welcome to What Not to Do. I'm Kyle Schmitz, and this is episode 19. I've got Sharon Hulce, founder and owner of Employment Resource Group. She grew up on a farm. She's part of the 1AM Club, and her greatest edge, she's going to straight up outwork you. She just wrote a book that could have been called the Prince Charles Syndrome because it's helping people crush their midlife crisis. You're going to love this conversation. Hold tight. We'll be right back. All right. So I'm sitting here at Copper Rock Coffee Company in Appleton off Ballard Avenue with Sharon Hulce. Our offices are just down the street. She is a founder, current president, CEO. She's an author, and she's wonderful. Sharon, I'm so excited to be sitting here with you. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you, Kyle. I'm excited too.
Good. So this is the first time that we've ever met.
It is.
We just connected via Jeff Middleton, I think it was, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Great guy. I think he was episode 5, which is fun. You should take a listen to it if you haven't already. And he speaks super highly of you. So I'm really excited to sit down and get to know you. One thing that our listeners may or may not be aware, but you just found out, is this is unscripted. You didn't get the questions in advance, right? We just kind of gave you a roadmap, so this is fun. Part of what I love doing about this podcast is I get to learn, I get to know you, and it's just a real conversation, which is so awesome. So all that to say, Sharon, tell us just a bit about who you are. Some of our listeners may know of you, a lot may not. So who are you? Where do you hail from? What do you have to do? Talk to us. Who's Sharon?
So I hail from just outside of Toma. I was born on a dairy farm. Loved the upbringing of being on a dairy farm, so that was great, but knew as a pretty young girl that I was not going to be a farmer's wife or live on a farm. So always liked the city better. Went to school in La Crosse, got married, lived in the Upper Peninsula for a while.
Okay.
Ended up in Appleton via a bad airline flight. So moved to where I could at least skip one little puddle jumper, and have been here now 28 years.
Wow.
And
wonderful.
Started Employment Resource Group 18 years ago and have been in the search business 24.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So, married?
I am not.
Not her? Okay. Do you have any kiddos?
I have one daughter. She's 20. She's at St. Norbert, and she's like the coolest kid ever.
That's so awesome. Yes, St. Norbert's a wonderful college. And you still have family out in Toma?
I do. My mother lives there, and my brother is still on the family farm.
I was just going to ask. Okay, so it's still in the family. Which is awesome. That's exciting. Very, very cool. So, when you're not CEO, president, and writing books, what do you love to do? What are some of your hobbies and interests?
Well, I love to travel, and I probably do that more than anything. And anybody who knows me knows I really love to shop.
Yeah.
So I try to tie travel and shopping together.
What are some of the favorite? Do you have are you a frequent flyer to some destination or a place that you really enjoy doing, or do you try to spread it all out? Or?
I try to spread it out, although I really love big cities. So I spend quite a bit of time in Chicago. I try to get down there about once every 6 weeks. I stay in the same place all the time, so they know me by name, and I just really love the city, like long weekends just to get away and rejuvenate my soul in my shoe closet.
Is it? So I'm not aware. Is this an appropriate question to ask? Like, can you ask a woman how many shoes she has?
Yeah, you don't want to know. It's a really big number. Imelda and I are fairly similar. Yeah. Probably not quite as many as her, but I have a lot of shoes.
That's awesome. That's so wonderful. So, that's great. So, talk to us a little bit about what you do. So, you founded ERG.
I did.
You are the CEO. You're the president. You've been doing this for 24 years. Give us a timeline. How did you get to that point where you started ERG? What was the need that you saw? What was that kind of genesis? Kind of walk us through a little timeline then to what you guys are up to today.
Yeah, so I started with another search firm, and the thing that sort of drove me crazy, I was very successful. I worked a construction practice solely, and I was very successful, had a lot of fun in the business, but everything was very transactional, so it was really built around, does the guy have a great resume or the gal have a great resume, send it in, and he really didn't didn't know a lot about culture. I didn't know a lot about their organizations, the pace of how people worked. I didn't know any of that. And it really started to weigh on me.
Yeah.
And the day I knew, Kyle, that I needed to leave is I went in, one of my clients that I had billed $500,000 to in a year, so a very big client, invited me to breakfast down in Milwaukee. He said, I've sent you all this money. I feel like we should get to know each other better. I said, that'd be great. Yeah. And I went in and I talked to my boss about doing that, and he said, this is a phone business. You don't need to do it. That's when I knew that is not going to work for me long term. So started Employment Resource Group and started it under the premise of we were going to go visit every client face to face, really get to know their cultures, get to know the pace of how people work, how they interact with each other, who's going to integrate and do it in a different way. And back then it was very revolutionary. I mean, nobody was doing it. Now a lot of people do it, obviously, and they visit. But back then, we were one of the very few firms ever that went out and actually spent a day inside their doors.
Yeah, that's so interesting. So what was that pull for you when your former boss told you this is just a phone business? What was that pull in you? What was the importance? Why did you see the need of building a relationship with people that you were serving?
Right. So I take what we do so seriously. So changing jobs is one of the top 3 stressors in a person's life, right? Besides a death and marriage. So for me, knowing that and knowing that we can transform companies and lives in a really significant way, I wanted to do it the right way and be very thoughtful. I didn't want to just throw people in, not really knowing if it was a good fit or not. So by being able to really meet the people, understand who would fit, not just what fits, but who would fit, we were able to make much better matches. And much like a marriage, I mean, you go to work and you spend probably more time at work than you do with your family, right? Making sure that time was good and that it was thoughtful.
Yeah. So that's awesome. So you, in your own experience, you identified a big gap in the market.
At that time, it was a huge gap.
Yeah. So did the dominoes just fall for you from that point, or was it a little bit of a roller coaster? I mean, so when you broke off, when did you decide to spin off and go do your own thing then at that point?
So I was with that firm about 6 years when I decided to do that. And early on, it was fairly easy. It was just myself and a phone. As we grew, we had a lot of bumps along the way. Right people. I certainly had a lot of learnings along the way, which I think every person who's in leadership has things that if we could have a do-over or get out of jail free cards, we'd love to pull that at any given time.
Yeah. But we'll get to that.
Yeah, right. But I think, would I change the journey? I certainly would change things, but I wouldn't not do it again.
Yeah. Sounds good. So then when you decided to spin off and start your own thing, you saw the need, you had the concept for it, you developed and said, look, we need to be this is a people business. Mm-hmm. If we don't know our people, how can we serve them? How can we place them correctly, right? So you're helping to bridge that gap. You now have 15 folks that work for you that are part of the ERG team, which is super exciting. So you've been doing this 24 years. Kind of give us a kind of high-level overview of that 24 years, that genesis for the company, for ERG. How did it start, and what does it look like today?
So, like I said, we started in what I affectionately call the tongue and group palace because it had all this tongue and group paneling. It was not pretty at all, but it was what we could afford at the time. So, and then I slowly started adding people. I will tell you one of the things that I didn't do well early on, and it's so funny because it absolutely was core in my finding matches for my clients, but I didn't really hire to my own values. The thing that probably was one of the biggest ahas I ever had in my career when I had people who didn't work out and just were not good fits for me, and then all of a sudden getting to the team I have today, which is by far the best team ever, is I wasn't hiring to my own core values. And I finally realized one of the things that I value most is courage. That ability to just put yourself out there and really try and be innovative and creative, and I wasn't hiring to that value. And it just wasn't working. I had a lot of people that just did not, for whatever reason, work out. And when I finally unpeeled the onion and said, okay, what is it that is making these people not work out? There's a lot of things. I mean, I'm a better leader today than I was then. I wanted everybody to work how I worked, and I wanted everybody to work at the pace I work, which is a torrid, crazy pace. Today, I try to be much more thoughtful about that. But hiring to my values was when we sort of turned the corner on our turnover went away, and we really started to get people who really fit the team that we wanted to build.
Yeah, that reminds me of Jim Collins in Good to Great, and getting the right people on the right bus, in the right seat.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's so important.
Hey, this is Kyle. Well done on your decision today to be great. Those are my kiddos in the background. Hey, if you want more of this kind of content, find me on social media. We'll keep the conversation going. You can hit me up on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, at StartWithWNTD. Again, at StartWithWNTD. We'll see you there.
That's awesome. So has the business of connecting people with potential opportunities in the workforce, is it the same business today as it was 24 years ago?
Not even close.
No, how's it changed?
Yeah. So when I first started, first of all, it was a very good economy. Yeah. So it was 96. So I went through 96, 97, 98, when I mean, basically they fogged a mirror, they hire them because it was so crazy. So then we went through a recession, and I've been through a couple of those, and we had to be much more thoughtful about how we spent money and how we made money. So we did a lot of consulting practices during that time. We did a lot of fire rehire when companies merged, and we just did a lot of things to keep the business going.
Yeah.
And then today, first of all, we're placing a different generation. We're still placing baby boomers, but insert the millennials. So that their thought process, what's important to them, the things that they are sold on are very different than the baby boomers.
Yeah.
Baby boomers are very much about clean facilities and providing a nice life for their family and good pay, and millennials are very much about their purpose and does what the business does for a living speak to their soul. So it's a very different sales, if you will, to get people excited about an opportunity. It also is a very hard labor market. We make twice as many calls to find the same number of candidates.
Wow.
And every single candidate last year got counteroffered. Every single one.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, so it's challenging even to get people out the door.
Yeah. Well, and even like you experience in your own company, it sounds like there's a lot of aligning values with folks that you're trying to serve, and understanding where they might be coming from generationally, demographically, understanding them, what they value, and then getting them in a company that really aligns with that. It's a good fit, no matter what those values might be. So,
right. Yeah. Well, and there's somebody for every company.
Yeah.
It's a matter of really understanding who fits. I mean, we deal with a lot of, I would tell you, CEOs that are incredibly aggressive, and some people would even tell you they might be mean. They all have really good hearts.
Yeah.
It's just sometimes the way they interact can come across as not being thoughtful, and really all it really boils down to is they're very passionate about the business and they want to take extremely good care of their customers.
Yeah.
So if we can help people to understand that and work through that, once they get past that hard exterior, they realize they're kind of a pussycat underneath and actually are really, really good people.
Yeah.
So our job is to help align that so that they don't just leave before they really get past that exterior.
Yeah, I can't even imagine like that dynamic alone. You probably have a million good stories you could tell. I mean, just and obviously you're just in the people business, right?
Right.
And it's in one sense we all are, right? But specifically with you, you're really getting to know people, and you probably just have some funny stories to tell, some sad stories, and some great stories, right?
Yeah. And that is true. A part of why I wrote the book is to share some of those stories, because people's challenges are sort of the same, and people's successes are also a lot the same. So it's making sure that people understand that they're not alone when they go through some of these challenges, or they're bored at work, or they're struggling, they're successful, but they're not feeling passionate about what they're doing anymore, and they feel like they're the only one who feels that way. So a lot of what we do is just try to help them through that process.
That's awesome. So let's get into the book. So You recently launched it, correct?
I did.
You got a billboard in town, which is awesome.
Yeah, okay.
You guys will see a picture of Sharon, but she's lovely, and it's exciting. It's very exciting time for you. Like you said, this is an overflow of your life's work, and it's an extension of you being able to really help people and connect people. Mm-hmm. So it's super exciting. So why don't you talk to us a little bit more about what the book is about, what's it called, why did you write it, and what do you hope it accomplishes?
Yeah, so the title of the book is A Well-Done Professional Midlife Crisis.
Yeah.
So it's for that profile person that's 40 to, say, 55 years old, very successful by all accord, outward appearances, but internally they're just not 100% happy. They're either bored because they've been doing the same thing and their work has become monotonous, or worse yet, they are so far away from what it is they were passionate about in their work, and now all they do is sit in meetings and solve problems, and they're missing the engagement of the challenge of what it was they did for a living. So it's helping people to understand, A, if they don't want to leave, which we don't always want them to, sometimes it makes sense not to, how can they bleed passion and energy back into the career they have? Or if it just is impossible and they need to leave, how can they be thoughtful about thinking through every part of their life, not just job to job, but what that means from a benefit standpoint, what that means from a compensation standpoint. How do you sell your competencies if you're changing industries? It's a competency-based hire as opposed to your resume looks great and you match exactly what we do. So just really taking them through that process. So the whole intent of the book, two reasons. From a candidate perspective, is just to let them know they're not alone and have a vehicle to help them from start to finish on making that decision. Because either way, it's a hard decision.
Yeah.
Even the conversation with your boss on "I need more" can be a hard discussion.
You need that courage to even have that conversation.
And a lot of what the book talks about is having the courage to get there. And then for a company, I call it the Prince Charles syndrome, where you have this group that you sort of forget about because they're your solid citizens, right? They're always there, they're always solid, they do their work, they're not messy, and we're so focused on the employee engagement of the millennials that group is sort of being missed, and they're the ones too that really need a new project, or they need to continue to be challenged because the early innovation that they had when they were younger in their career isn't there anymore. So we need to be thoughtful about giving them things to do that will create energy and passion for them as well. So that's kind of those two intents is why I wrote the book.
That'd have been a fun alternate title, the Prince Charles syndrome.
Yeah, right. We're just going to skip over that generation,
And what is the title of the book?
A Well-Done Professional Midlife Crisis.
Wonderful. So we'll have that in the show notes for folks. They can go out and get a copy. It could be that we have folks that are listening right now that needed to hear exactly what you just had, right? Maybe they're experiencing that exact thing. We have folks that listen from all different age brackets, from young folks that are really trying to build something, aspiring to something more, to people that like exactly what you just described, are finding themselves later and say, hey, what's next? Is this it? I think I want more. I know that there's more. I just don't know where to go. And this would be a great starting point just to dig into that idea and hopefully guide them to that next step.
Yeah, it's amazing how, and it's such a non-event that becomes a big event. The number one reason we see people come to see us is they turn 50. And, they're like, well, my life is half over. Of course, that's assuming they're going to live to be 100, and everybody assumes they're going to, right? So, and it's really funny. I'll say to them, so, anything significant going on in your life? And they'll say, well, I just had a big birthday. And it's like, okay.
That'd be an interesting stat or something around with the analytics, like, how many people have been, 50 when they've come to us. Oh, that's awesome. Well, you've already alluded to it a little bit, but if you could kind of sum up, why do you do what you do? Like, what keeps you wake up in the morning and really wanting to connect with people and help to align them to a greater mission in life, via an opportunity someplace in professional workforce?
Yeah, so I'll give you an example it's a perfect example of why I do what I do.
Yeah.
So 18 years ago, I placed a young man as a project engineer in a company. And about a month ago, he was named the new president. And, just the transformation in his career and his life. He did all the heavy lifting. All we did was offer up that opportunity. But I told him, I said, I feel like your mother. I'm so proud that, he did that.
Yeah.
And we have hundreds and hundreds of those stories of people who spent their whole career in places that we helped them to find. And we're happy. I was out to dinner, and this was probably, 2 years ago. And I walked in, and this couple was there. I had placed the husband. And he said, "We're celebrating you." And I'm like, "Yeah, right, okay." And he goes, "No." He said, he's 56 years old, and he's going to be retiring. And he would never, ever felt like that could have happened. But because we put him in the right place, he became an owner of the company and created some wealth, he was able to retire early. So they were celebrating the fact that he was going to be retiring at 56, which is really cool.
Yeah. So you're really in the business of helping people be happy.
Yeah.
You're not working magic. It's a simple math, so to speak. But that's what keeps you getting up and every day and say, who's next?
Yeah,
whose life can we change next? Who can we impact next?
Yeah, if you read the book, that's the number one undertow is we just want people happy.
Yeah.
Whether you stay or go, it doesn't matter to us. We just want people to feel good again.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Hey, thank you so much for listening. If you haven't already, and only if you think the show deserves it, would you go over to Apple Podcasts and give us an honest, thoughtful 5-star review? This will really help us in our mission to equip the world for success.
So I didn't ask you this in the first round here, but what are you drinking? What are you sipping on?
I am drinking a skinny vanilla latte.
Nice. Is that your go-to?
I really like a skinny cinnamon dolce latte, but they don't have it here. But this is my treat. I will tell you, I tend to drink black coffee more than anything, just from a calorie perspective.
Sure.
But I decided today, since I didn't really get much chance for lunch, I was going to have a treat.
Liquid calories.
Liquid calories.
That's awesome. I'm a black coffee guy myself. The stronger, the better. But I'm actually doing the liquid calorie thing too here. I've got a breve latte, so it's half and half, and give me all the fat, right? Give me all the calories.
Nice.
Keeps the beard thick. So, Sharon, we'll get into the main segment. What'd you do right? What'd you do wrong? And if given the chance, what would you do differently? So, as you're looking back over the course of your journey, you've had a lot of success, and you're still experiencing that. And it seems like for you, part of that definition of success is reproducing that in the lives of others, which is really, really cool. So as you look back, what are a few things that you say, you know what, I really did this right, and that you would unabashedly encourage someone else to go ahead and make the same choice or decision?
So I would tell you that within the executive search industry, I speak a lot, and the thing that I think is kind of the number one thing we did right is we established a very strong process from start to finish on how we find people, present people, integrate people, that whole piece of it. And it makes it easy for our employers, and it makes it easy for our candidates to get through the process. So I think that's a big piece of our success. We demonstrate the process every time we go out, and people understand exactly what they're going to get for their money.
Yeah.
So, and for candidates, it's good because people don't always understand what does a recruiter do, right? They don't really get the whole process. So by us having a really definable, explainable process, it helps everybody to understand A to Z what it's going to look like.
Yeah, that's important. So did you map out that process before you went after the first client, or did you kind of have it already in mind, or was there a bit of iteration there where it kind of developed a little bit along the way?
I absolutely would tell you it was developed along the way, and our clients helped to develop it.
Yeah.
So probably at about year 3 or 4, I realized that if I was going to grow the business, I needed to do this. So we had focus groups with several of either the president of the company or some HR professionals. We brought them in and said, how would you like to receive information? What would be helpful to streamline your process? How many candidates would you like to interview, and what kind of proximity of time? So our process really was the brainchild of a group of clients that by them telling us what they ideally wanted, then we just figured out a way to present it to them. So as much as I'd love to say it was my idea, it wasn't.
Yeah, but that's huge. I mean, giving your clients a a feeling and a sense of ownership in how this process goes. And so it's like, and then it kind of goes in line with you getting to know people better, what serves people the best, and what brings about those desired results.
Yeah. I would say that, ours is a sales business. Every business, like you said, everybody sells. If you don't understand the voice of your customer, I don't know how anybody's successful.
Yeah.
So for me, and the interesting thing is, because of my personality, my clients became my friends. I mean, I would do things with them, and I went to weddings, and I went to, you name it. So because they were friends, we could have really candid conversations, and they were honest about really giving us good feedback, especially early on.
Yeah.
So, I'm just really lucky that we had the clients that we had, and they had been, at that point, clients for 9-10 years, and they were just very open about, here's how you could streamline it for me and save us time, which, time is probably the hardest commodity, especially the higher up in an organization, the less time it seems like people have. So in this particular industry, because we deal with high-level candidates, high-level clients, the more we can compact their need to steal their time away, the better this process is going to go.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. Yeah. Man, there's so much there. We could riff on that for hours, right? Well, what else? What else? Looking back over the course of your career, what are some other things you did right?
So, I would tell you that my capacity for work has always been probably my biggest advantage. I absolutely love what I do. It is my life vocation. It's the perfect industry for me because, I have just a goofy, dorky personality, and I mean, I do. So I think I have a pretty good sense of humor. So because of that, and two, I try to give lovingly candid feedback. I've gotten a lot more direct as I've gotten into the industry longer, which is probably not good. But I find that, again, it saves time and just telling people exactly the way it is. But so, I would tell you that because of my capacity for work, nobody's ever going to outwork me. I'm kind of I don't want to use Kobe Bryant because Lord rest his soul, but he always said nobody's going to outwork me on the court. That's how I feel about our industry. I mean, I'll put in 80 hours a week and not even blink. I was up at 1 o'clock last night and worked until 5 and then jumped in the shower and came to work. I mean, sometimes I just don't sleep, so I just get up and I start working, and I probably got more done from 1 to 5 than most people get done in a day.
1 a.m. to 5 a.m. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you've heard of the 4 a.m. club, but how about the 1 a.m. club, right? That's awesome.
Right. Well, I do get up at 4 a.m. Most days work out, but I didn't have to work out last night, but I just couldn't sleep. I just, for whatever reason, had a lot in my mind, so I just got up and started working. So
do you think, did growing up on a farm have anything to do with shaping?
I think so. My dad was a huge influencer, and I watched him work extremely hard. I mean, I remember as a little girl, my mom and my brother, when we were little, taking sandwiches out to the field at like 9 o'clock at night. My mom would milk, my dad would come in and milk, and then he'd go back out into the field and farm with lights. And we would take dinner out to him. We'd sit there and he'd eat, and then we'd go back and go to bed. So there's no question that I think having that upbringing, well, by the time I was born, my dad had hired men, so I didn't have to. I've never milked a cow, which is hysterical. Long story about that, but I've never milked a cow. But I certainly appreciate the fact that if you want anything in life, you have to work for it.
Exactly. Yeah. It's not just being given to you, and something so hands-on like a farm. And farm life teaches you that. It just doesn't come. You got to work the land. You got to plant in one season. You have to water in another season, and you expect to harvest, but you don't know how that's ultimately going to turn out.
Right.
And that's really good. And it seems like the other thing you've done too, that came out in that first point, was you really, just through who you are and loving people, you've really established such a trust where they just feel safe with you, right? That you can be candid and it's received well. That's amazing. And I think that's probably maybe something that's missing in a lot of businesses today across industries, is that trust from the client, the customer, the consumer, and the ultimate company itself, and that trust that, hey, they have my best interests in mind. They're not just trying to sell me. It's they have me in mind, and when they feel like when they make me successful, they're going to be successful. And it seems like that's kind of your outlook on things.
Yeah, I would tell you that that can be a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
no doubt that we build great trust with the people that entrust us with their career. And same thing with the clients that entrust us to help them grow their business. But on the other side of the equation, we don't always have everybody as a friend either, because we do have to take candidates from somewhere, or sometimes we have to tell a candidate that they were not chosen for a job. That's been hard for me to have people not like me because they feel like they were done wrong. And we do the best we can, and we try to be thoughtful, and we try to be helpful, but we can't help everyone. And it took me a long time to kind of get over that. I would tell you today that while I try to be thoughtful and I deliver bad news, it's still bad news. I do have one rule. Good news I can send it in writing, but bad news is always a phone call or a conversation live.
That's a good rule. Good news. Would you ever give good news over the phone or in person?
Oh, sure. That's the fun stuff to do. But I just try to make sure that if I have to deliver a no, that I do it voice to voice. Because then they can at least tell that I care, and I am sorry that they weren't chosen, or that we will continue to try if we can to find something. I just find that if I follow that rule, it goes better.
Yeah, I mean, in our day and age of social media life, texting, everything, I mean, how easily things can be misconstrued, and how often we read a tone into text. And so I can see in your line of work that's so important. They feel, they hear, they know at the best that you can communicate that. So
all right, I want to know, who's next? Who do you want to hear on what not to do? Which entrepreneur, which leader, which public figure in your network do you want to hear on the show? Maybe it's you. Maybe you need to be here. So let's connect me with whomever, and we'll sit down for coffee, a beer, or even a cigar, and together equip the world for success.
Well, that's good. Well, my guess is that I'm going to roll the dice here and say you probably haven't done everything right in life.
Oh, my goodness.
So kind of the same thing as you're scanning back over the course of your career. What's one, two, maybe three things that kind of rise to the top? They stand head and shoulders above everything else, where you just be like, man, if I could have that back. Not that you necessarily regret it. You probably learned from it. It's probably parlayed that into success, which is great. But what's one, two, or three failures that you'd readily share?
So the first one I've mentioned, and that was thoughtful hiring. I went through this period of time where I felt like I had to just take anyone who would try our business. And you can make a lot of money in this business. I mean, people can do as well as doctors if they're good in this business. So I probably was in the wrong mind frame as I hired, especially early on. I hired people that I knew it was a gamble. Values-wise were not good fits. And then myself as a leader, especially as a young leader, I felt like everybody needed to work as hard as I work, and everybody needed to do it my way. And while we still have our process we follow, and that process works, so we like to follow that, I've tried to be better about not only letting them kind of, interject their own style, but on the other side of the equation, really being thoughtful about everybody's not going to work at my pace, and just knowing that most people don't need to work at my pace to be successful. You can definitely work smarter, not harder. I like to think I work both, but there's a lot of circumstances where I don't always have very good balance, and they want good balance. And I have finally gotten to a place in my life where I honor that more. I give more vacation. Everybody in our organization gets 4 weeks vacation right out of the chute. That's new, and we never used to do that, but we want people to take time for rest and relaxation and to spend time with their families. So we're trying to be more thoughtful about making sure that people feel cared for. I spend a lot of time, probably too much time, in thinking about what can I do for them to let them know I appreciate them, because we do have to work hard. I mean, we are incredibly busy. We always have a lot of searches going on at any given time. So because they work so hard, I try to make sure they know I appreciate that.
Yeah, it's so important. So how would you how would you phrase that in like a don't do this type of way? Like if you were to tell someone what not to do regarding hiring for your team, how would you say it? You'd say don't do this.
Yeah, I would tell make sure that you know what values are most important to you, and know that some of the young leadership you'll evolve through that, and always put the person first, not necessarily your own needs or profits first. Always focus on the person. And then, once you get to the point where you start to establish people that really are a good culture fit and good from a values perspective, allow them to work in different ways than you work. It doesn't necessarily have to mean that everybody needs to be little images of you. And it took me a long time to understand that. I mean, when I started ERG, it was not very old. I was early 30s, and then I had never, the honest answer is I had never had a good boss. I had a couple bosses in my life, both of which were like extremely mean people. So I never had a really good example. My best example of a leader was my father. And he died when I was 23. So he died when I was very young. But he was a great mentor. And I would tell you today, I hear him more than ever.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah, so a couple things in there. So you're saying don't underestimate or ignore the importance of values and culture when you're hiring. And then when you do get people on the team, don't expect everyone just to be like a mini-me, a mini Kyle, a mini Sharon, right? You're saying, and kind of like what you're doing in the clients that you're serving, you're getting to know them and kind of see their strengths and abilities. And you're saying, hey, guess what? Your team, your clients too. We should be doing the same thing with our own team, and getting to know them and then helping them to position them to really succeed in the company, not just expect them to look like a Kyle or look like a Sharon. Not that people can't adopt traits and qualities and all that kind of stuff, and they should. But you don't want just like a clone or clowns running around, being something or someone that they're not, right?
Right. Yeah, I would, when I look back, I kept people too long that I knew were bad culture fits and were very negative. And I kept them because they might have been a better producer, or, I didn't want to have turnover. Today, when I look at my team, so we're starting to build some really nice tenure within the organization. And when I look at that team, they all really take good care of each other, and they're very kind to me. I try to be really good to them back, but they're really kind to each other, and they take time to really take care of each other. When I think back on the people who didn't fit, they were very themselves focused. They didn't share. They closed their doors. There was a lot of things that were early indicators that I just completely ignored.
Maybe a fit elsewhere, but not
right.
in this team, not
right.
with this company. That's good. What else comes to mind as far as looking back and a failure that rises from above?
Boy, there's so many.
You can do multiple episodes if you want.
Yeah, right. there could be an ongoing list. I think just really early on, so many of the things that I look back on as if I could have a do-over were early in the career. Not that we don't have things today.
Yeah, sure.
But, I think the other piece is when I would have been probably a really new manager, I wish I would have taken more finance classes. I was really, really lucky that I had a gentleman. I was in a Vistage Tech Group, and he was a CPA, owned a company, and he came down during the recession because I just was worried if we could even make it or not. And he came down and he really helped me strip apart my P&L. And it was only at that point that I became more of a thoughtful financial leader. When you're in sales, you focus on sales. And you don't really focus on your numbers, or you don't really focus on the things that you need to focus on as a good business leader.
Yeah.
So in recommending, I wish I would have taken more. I mean, I took classes in college, but that was a long time ago. So I wish I would have been more thoughtful on making sure that I continued my education. Fox Valley Tech has classes, and all the universities offer classes of really making sure that I stayed on top of our numbers, because it took us longer to grow than I would have liked, and a lot of that was just us paying attention to the top line, but not necessarily the bottom one.
Yeah. So is that? Yeah. So you're saying your strength, we're sales, we're working with people, all that kind of stuff. And in a sense, you're saying, hey, don't just ignore the things that aren't necessarily your strengths, especially if you're leading, and especially something as crucial as cash flow.
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
That's interesting. So how would you say that? Like, would you say it in that way? Like, hey, don't ignore the money, or how would you?
Yeah, I mean, or just I think so many of us we're very top line focused.
Yeah.
If we bring in a lot of revenue, we feel good, but that doesn't necessarily equate to profits. And I see a lot of businesses, not it can be any number of businesses that. I look at their total revenue and I think, wow, they're doing really well. But then when you really start to unpeel the onion on what that looks like from a profitability standpoint, it's, they're working really hard, not for necessarily a lot of money. So
slim margins, everything like that. Yeah.
Yep.
That's so important. Yeah. And it's, and being in sales, you can get really excited because you hit your quota. But we can all understand, individually, like, hey, after the tax man comes and Uncle Sam collects everything, like, what are we taking home? But in a sense, it doesn't matter how much we, produced. What's our take home that we actually have left to live with, and it's true for our company.
When I first started, I built a new building that would house a very large team, and I was very focused on growth, just top line growth. In hindsight, I should have stuck to my original plan. I wanted a much smaller building, and I got kind of talked into having a much bigger building, much bigger nut, and I should have stayed true to my original plan, because if I would have, we would have been in much better shape as we went through the recession. I ended up selling the building just to make sure that we weren't a casualty of the recession. So, those are all things. And again, I don't regret any of it. It's all been fabulous life lessons.
Yeah.
But for somebody who's just starting out, I would certainly recommend that they're more thoughtful on not just growth for growth's sake, but growth for profitability's sake.
Yeah, that's good.
Well, it is one of my main goals to give you more in use value than what I take from you in cash value. And so, man, I love that this podcast is for free. And I really hope that you are finding just incredible value. Who knows, maybe in one of these episodes, you'll take an idea that will be worth $1 million to you. And that's so awesome. If you believe in this and what we're doing here and you'd like to give, you can go to patreon.com/whatnotttodo and you can give according to your heart's desire. But seriously, every little bit helps in our mission to equip the world for success. Thank you so much.
So that really kind of leads perfectly into the last question here. If you could go back and given the chance, do something differently, what would you do differently? So can you maybe unpack a little bit? You had that growth mindset. You were top line focused, and you said you maybe would have, maybe for you that was straying a little bit from the original vision, and you'd maybe counsel someone to not forget what that original vision is. But talk to us of the dynamics. I mean, I know there are influences, people that want you to build that building, right? Companies that want the business from you to build the building, all that kind of stuff, and people might not realize the kind of pressure that goes into some of those decisions. But kind of unpack us, why you'd go back and do that differently, or a little bit more.
Yeah, so, now in hindsight, when I look at just sort of our growth path, I wanted big growth quickly, and early on I was told that the best leaders make bold moves quickly. And while I did that, I don't know that I really stayed true to the plan that I originally had with what Employment Resource Group would look like. And I was fortunate enough that we had some great mentors and some great people who helped us along the way to course correct, if you will. But I think with everything in life and everything as it relates to having a business, working in a business, you have to be thoughtful about a plan and then execute on the plan. I would say that when I look at people in their careers who get derailed or families that get derailed, they have this vision or this ideal of what they think it's supposed to look like, and they're not thoughtful on executing on a true plan. I'm a firm believer that whether it's your family or your kids, or you need to have goals that you set with each other and then be thoughtful about how you're going to execute on those goals. I mean, my daughter and I, we always go away over the holidays, and we talk about what do we want the year to look like, what do we want our travel plans to look like, and that gives me a line of sight on what kind of expenses am I going to have on our travel. What is it that she wants to do, if she wants to travel abroad for school or not, or so we're very thoughtful about what are our goals, and we've done that ever since I got divorced when she was 8. And she and I are she's absolutely my best friend, and we are very aligned on, okay, so what do we want life to look like?
Yeah,
so
that's so cool.
Yeah, that's been great. And, I have a boyfriend, with our relationship, we talk about what do we want our year to look like, and we're thoughtful on that. I try to be much more thoughtful on the business planning, and then staying close to it. I meet with my leadership team every Thursday morning, and we go over all of our KPIs every Thursday morning. And I'll be honest, I hate all that stuff. I hate following metrics, and I just want to sell stuff. I just want to talk to people. I just want to build relationships, and I just want to help people to be happy. So all that other stuff is like stuff I have to do. It's not stuff I want to do. Yeah. But being thoughtful about it and staying on top of it makes it a lot easier, because then there's not a lot of surprises, and course correcting is super easy, as opposed to waiting until the issue becomes so big it's hard to course correct.
Yeah. And that's so important too. Even like you mentioned, personally, professionally, you experience this as a business, in your private life, and the clients that you're serving, getting clear on what it is that you want, and then developing a plan and goals, and then the courage, the grit, just to execute that plan. And we need that for a sort of compass. And maybe the goals and the plan can change. It can get tweaked or course correct here as we go. We can iterate with that. But it's important to have that in the first place and remember. And that can kind of hedge against when other opportunities come, and distractions isn't necessarily a bad thing. They could be really good opportunities, but if they don't align with what you set for yourself, then you gotta say no to it, right, and dismiss it. And I think it's easy for folks to get derailed because there's so many good options that come along, that if you don't kind of gird yourself with that plan, and that's executing a particular vision that you set, you're gonna fall prey to everything. And
one of my favorite quotes is, "A vision without goals is just a dream." And it's true. While I love to have fabulous dreams and think of things, if I'm not willing to set goals and execute against it, then it's just a dream, and it's not going to mean anything, and it's probably not going to come true.
Yeah, that's good. That's so helpful. So for our listeners, as you're hearing Sharon speak here, it's so important to be clear. She's not the first one that's even mentioned this too. And so wherever you're at in your journey, whether you're 40, in your 40s and you're thinking, hey, what's next? Or whether you're just starting out, maybe you're in high school and you're listening to this,
Mm-hmm.
wherever you might be in your life, personal, professional, etc., get clear on what you want. Mm-hmm. And if you need help creating a plan to do that, then get the help. But it's so important to get to where you want to go. It kind of reminds me of the quote that I don't know who said it. I've got so many quotes floating around my head. But if you don't know where you want to go, any road will take you there. Mm-hmm. Right. And it's a kind of a similar thing to what you're saying. A vision without goals it's just a dream. It's not, you're just going to end up somewhere in life, and that's it.
Yeah, when I was probably 24, I was a big Zig Ziglar person.
Yeah.
And I remember him saying, when I do the things I ought to do, when I ought to do them, the day will come that I can do the things I want to do when I want to do them. And I've remembered that ever since that. And I think about that all the time, is sometimes we have to do things that we don't necessarily want to do. But then ultimately, if we do them, we can do the things we want to do.
Yeah.
And I've just always been a believer in that. So, if the journey isn't always easy, and the journey isn't supposed to always be easy, but if you stay in the game, it'll be worth it.
Stay in the game.
Stay in the game.
Well, I'm really excited to share with you that What Not to Do has been gaining traction and momentum and experiencing some early wins, which is super exciting, and reminded me this show is about you, it's for you, and I couldn't do it without you. So thank you so much. If you're part of a company, if you own a company, and you think your message would be really, really relevant and valuable to the folks that are part of this community, entrepreneurs, leaders, public figures, and those aspiring as such, reach out to me. My contact info is in the show notes, and we can sit down and consider what it would look like to partner together in equipping the world for success.
All right, so one of the pictures I really love in life is that of a seed that blossoms into a flower. And if you consider like a rose, the promise of the rose is wrapped up in the seed, right? And so that seed gets planted, or I guess the way to say it is what determines whether or not that seed goes from seed and the promise fully realized to rose is environment, right? And we, in life, we are so inescapably influenced by our environments, our surroundings. So like with this rose seed, it needs sun, it needs water, and it needs them in the right proportions. Otherwise, it can get, squashed or cut down from something else if it's not guarded or protected. If that seed falls on blacktop, it's not going anywhere, And human life is so much like this. And so we're shaped, we're influenced by our surroundings, the people that are in our lives, etc. And sometimes we're not even aware of who's shaping us and how we're being shaped. And so I don't know that we could write down a list of everyone that shaped us in our lives. And sometimes people shape us positively and negatively. We've had, I've sat down with folks that have told me that, the biggest person that had an impact on their lives was someone they were young who told them that they would never be anything in life. And that's just amazing, So it can come positively, it can come negatively. It could come directly. Parent, teacher, coach, boss, something like that. It could come indirectly. Someone that we've never met, but we've read all their books, listened to all their lectures, whatever it might be, and we would say, I would not be who I am today without them. So, Sharon, I'm curious for you, who is that person that comes to mind, and probably several, but that you would not be who you are today without their presence in your life?
So, well, I would start with my father, because he was, and both my parents were, and my mother today, she's still alive and she's a great influence. But when I was a young girl, probably about 12, 13, 14, my dad was the person who made me do things that in a million years, A, I didn't want to do, and B, I was like, you're really going to make me do that? So he would put me in all these public speaking contests for 4-H, and he made me do all these things. And he would always say to me, you're the one. And the cool thing about my dad is we have 4 in our family, 4 kids. He made every one of us feel like we were the one. Yeah. So we always thought we were his favorite, but we all were his favorite.
It's a good dad.
I know, it's a good dad. But he made me do things early on that absolutely transformed who I am. Yeah. And so much of who I am is like him. My dad was a very intuitive guy. He was a really good strategic farmer. He did things that nobody else had done on the farm. And I think that whole entrepreneurial thought leadership, what the hell, I'll try it kind of thing came from my dad, right? So certainly his influence, especially early on when I was young and very impressionable, came from him. My faith in God is certainly keeps me grounded, and just is amazing. And then as I've gotten into business, I've been really, really lucky. We do a lot of searches for our community pro bono for the not-for-profits, and everybody says that's so nice that we do that, but I've gotten 100 times back. John Bergstrom became a mentor of mine because of one of those searches, and just his early advice in business. He gave me, first of all, a lot of the things that are in the book, some of those early learnings about people and about taking care of the customer, or in his case, the guest. A lot of those things. And I've had a lot of female friends, Kathy Seifert, Kathy Tierney, all those people have influenced me as far as how to be a better business person. We have candid conversations about life, love, and the pursuit of happiness. And I love that about all my friends. My team are great influencers because they're fun and they're funny. So the thing I love about my team is they influence me every day to be a better person and to laugh and to be a dork, which I love. My daughter, she's the reason why I do what I do every day. She makes me get up and she makes me want to be better, because I want to make her proud. I want to be able to give her a college education. I want to be able to help her with a home. I want, so there's so many people, and you're right. I mean, I think, and again, as it relates to advice to somebody who's younger, get a mentor. Absolutely get a mentor, because it's transformational to have a really good mentor in your life.
Yeah, well, speaking of advice, that's really good advice, but I'm not interested in really good advice. We were joking off air about how sometimes how hard it is to think about like bad advice. So that's the question, Sharon. What's some of the worst advice that you hear floating around? And again, the way that I set it up, it's like you kind of crank away a copper rock or whatever it might be, and you hear someone over at table 19 tell his buddy to do this, that, or the other thing, and you just stop, you cringe, the blood's rushing through your veins, and you're like, that's the worst advice I've ever heard. You're ready to go over there and just talk some sense into him. So for you, what's just some really bad advice you hear floating around these days?
So I'm going to equate it to our business because that's where I live, so much. Probably the worst advice. I hear a lot of, for example, candidates that will go to circles of influences, and either they'll tell them that they need to hurry through the process of finding their life location, which it seems like the more people hurry, the less they really absolutely find the right thing. So when we take people through a process, we want to make sure it's a good fit both ways, and being really thoughtful about thinking through, are my values in alignment with this organization, and being willing to ask the questions on, tell me about a hire that didn't work out and why it didn't work out, and so that you get a lens on that. So that willingness to do that, and the fact that 90% of people don't do it, it's just really bad advice. The other bad advice, and it happens every day, is taking a counteroffer, because in my 24 years of search, I've had lots of people take counteroffers. I have only had one make it past 18 months after accepting a counteroffer. And it's unfortunate because it's a finger in the dike type move till they can figure out what to do. I'd love to have it work out for the candidate. I really would, and I'd love it to be a good decision. But it's just history repeats itself, and unfortunately, we see it over and over again where the loyalty's been broke, and then during a recession, they end up being the first one cut, and then it's hard for us to find them something.
So that's interesting, because that sounds like wisdom to me, right? It sounds like, hey, wait for the counteroffer. But you're saying how it's played out, that's not wisdom. That's actually some of the worst advice you've heard. Why do you have any speculations as that kind of phenomenon? Like why people that go for the counteroffer, it ends up not actually working out long?
Well, so I think about it from two lenses. One as their recruiter, and then one as an employer myself. And I think the biggest thing is it's loyalty, it's trust, it's respect. When somebody has been out looking, and that they are to the point where they actually received an offer from someone else, and they come to you almost with the expectation that you're going to work to keep them. It's almost it creates a little bit of resentment within those employers. And while they'll do it because they need to do it, because they need to make sure that there's continuity, the first opportunity that they have where if it's a recession or they find another person who could take that person's place, and that's what we see. I always tell people, just have the conversation before you go out and start looking for a job.
Yeah.
If things aren't the way you want them to be, just go talk to them. I mean, everything in the world gets solved just by communicating.
You mean if we keep it all in, it's going to just go worse for us? Is that what you're trying to tell me?
That's exactly right. Just talk to people.
Oh, that's awesome. You heard it here, folks. Don't wait for the counteroffer. Waiting for the counteroffer is some of the worst advice. And that's amazing. Maybe it goes back to that idea of the relationship and the trust. Like you said, companies, and maybe they're not consciously thinking it, but subconsciously they kind of mark the person as maybe not super loyal, committed, or that'd be hard to maybe quantify, with data, but really interesting. The data that does show most often doesn't work out.
Yeah, if you Google counteroffer, you'll see tremendous amount of data around what we're saying, and that is that long term, short term it works out fine, but after about 18 months, that's when they're not there anymore. And like I said, if you're not happy or you're sensing that you should be making more money or you'd like a different role or you'd like more to, just go talk to them. Have the conversation. It's all about having the courage to have that thoughtful, caring conversation before you get to that point.
Yeah, it's so good. So important. All right, last but not least, it's rush hour, Sharon, in every major city in the world, even Chicago, right? And billions of people probably listening to this episode with Sharon Hulce, right, on what not to do. And once you know it, they look up, and lo and behold, it's Sharon's billboard. What message do they see? What message, Sharon, do you want the world to see?
Probably not the one that's on the billboard on 41. That's just about a book. If it was just a billboard for me, and that is that, just take care of each other. People need to take care of people. We need to be kind. We need to show that we really do care. And I know that seems cliche, and it can seem, but talk to each other, care about each other, and a lot of the issues that we see with employers all go away just by having thoughtful, candid conversation.
Yeah. Well, if it is cliche, then it's cliche for a reason, right? Yeah. Just good. All right, bonus round. 3 books that you think, aside from yours, because that's just a given, right? People are going to go out and get it. We'll have that in the show notes. But 3 books that you think people really need to have on their bookshelf.
So I like The Success Principles by Jack Canfield.
Yep.
We read that book as an office, and I would recommend that to every single graduating senior. Yeah. Because it is so many just really fundamental life principles that would be very helpful.
Yep.
What else? I'm trying to think. Good to Great. I love Good to Great. Yeah. I think that was we read that also as an office, and that was a very good book. Let's see. 3 books. I read so much that sometimes they all start to jumble together. I'm more off. I love everything by Simon Sinek. Yeah, he's great. Trying to think what the name of the book is by the gentleman who owns the company up in. Just saw him speak not very long ago. It's up in like Coleman or something. I can't remember the name of the book, but that's also a great book, and it's about people, taking care of people. I can't remember the name of it. I'm getting old, Kyle.
Hey, that makes 2 of us. I'm getting gray hairs in my beard. So.
Okay, you're half my age, so okay.
Well, good. So I'll see if I can't find that one down. But yeah, anything from Simon Sinek. And we talked a little bit earlier about Start With Why. So would that be one that you'd recommend?
Yeah, I love that book.
For sure.
That's a great book. Especially, I think, more so, that book, I think, was targeted at a younger generation. I think the baby boomers, I'm a baby boomer, I think the baby boomers need to read that to really understand purpose and why of that generation and how we communicate that, because no longer are clean facilities, climate controlled, and a safe place to raise kids the primary focus of why people want to be in a company.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, foundational read, and same thing with Success Principles too. I mean, there's so many important things there, and practical. It's not all just like kind of theories and ideas.
No, it's very practical.
Yeah.
And I told Katie to read it, and I think every graduating senior should read that book.
Sharon, this has been absolutely wonderful. I've really enjoyed our time together today. I hope folks felt like they were sipping on a skinny vanilla latte with us here at Copper Rock and just enjoying the conversation. And I hope they've been helped. I think one of the really cool things about me being able to kind of broker the conversation of your story and other folks that are striving to learn and get clear on what they want in life is, who knows, maybe one thing that you said would have given someone $1 million idea, or one thing that you said would have been that point of giving someone life or the push in the right direction to radically change the course of their life. I love that. I love impacting people, and I couldn't have done that today without you. So thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you for asking me.
Yeah. So if people want to get in touch with you, we'll have your book in the show notes, but how can they connect with Sharon?
So best way to connect with me is via email.
Okay.
So it's Sharon, SHARON, only one R, at ergsearch.com.
Perfect. Okay. If you're looking to be connected, if you're looking to try to learn from Sharon, whatever it is or whatever it might be, start there. And you're on LinkedIn as well?
I am.
Awesome. Another great place. And go get the book. Be changed. It'll be awesome. So, awesome. Thank you so much, Sharon. Yeah.
My time with Sharon was absolutely wonderful. Such seasoned advice and so much wisdom, and just a delight to be with. Yeah, wonderful. So let's recap. First, Sharon told us don't ignore values and culture, and really don't underestimate values and culture. In her line of work, she's aligning people with opportunities, and really it's so much more than just a skill set for a specific, she's not trying to put a round peg in a round hole. She's lining so much more than that, and how important values are. And when you get a group of people together that are living in a certain way according to certain values, it creates a culture, and aligning that is so important. You can't underestimate that. Secondly, don't expect mini-me's. Don't expect mini-me's. We maybe as leaders, we want to project how we do things on everyone else, and that's how they should do things. And because, we get up at 5 a.m., they should get up at 5 a.m. And because we do X in a certain way, that they should do X in a certain way. And as leaders, we have to be more attuned to our people than that. We have to be more aware. We have to be students of the people that we're leading to really understand who they are, what they're good at, what they're not good at, and get them in the right seat. So if Jim Collins talks about getting the right people, on the bus and in the right seat. And that's really, really important. And in order to do that, you can't think everyone looks like you, because you have your seat and not everyone's going to be in your seat, right? They can't be. All right. And last, don't ignore the bottom line. Don't ignore the bottom line. This is interesting. And she had mentioned this from like a sales perspective. And I, as having been in sales, can understand this. It's like, oh, I sold $1 million this year. Oh, I sold this year. Oh, I sold X this year. That's great. How much did you take home? Right? Like, what's the profit? Like after taxes, after expenses, what did you really create? What did you really make, right? I think it's important. I think that's important as individuals. I think it's important as companies to understand, look, it's not so much about the top line, it's actually about the bottom line. When you consider the top line, well, what about the cost of the sale? How much did it cost you just to get the sale or to sell the $1 million or whatever it might have been, right? I mean, there's so much that factors into that. So it's not necessarily the right number to focus on. You do not want to ignore the bottom line. The bottom line is really the take home. It's the more important number. Well, thank you so much for listening. This podcast is about you. It's for you, and I couldn't do it without you. So thank you so much. Been getting such good feedback, and it's so encouraging to me, and I want to provide all the more value to you guys. One way that you guys can help with that is if this podcast has been a help to you, share it with friends, share it with your networks. If you're in Facebook groups, etc., put out an episode that was really, really helpful for you, or tag me in it, or whatever that looks like. Another way that you can also help would be by giving us a 5-star review on whatever platform you listen, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, etc. That helps to get these stories out to the world. Otherwise, no one knows about it or thinks it's not any good, right? So anyway, that you guys can help out in that regard. It was super, super helpful. Also, again, looking for folks to be able to interview. Scheduled out pretty far in advance, but that's okay. I'm looking for folks that are aspiring to build something, right? And they've had success, and yet they've been in the trenches and they're willing to lean into those failures. And I can broker that conversation with you guys here that may never have had the chance to meet or sit down with that person. Super, super exciting stuff. And if you are a company, if you are a business owner, and maybe you'd want to be a guest, or maybe you'd want to consider getting your message in front of the community here at What Not to Do, and reach out to me, and we can sit down together and consider what a partnership would look like. And that'd be awesome. See how we can align together in our mission to equip the world for success. Well, it's been said that good men learn from their own mistakes, but great men, they learn from the mistakes of others. So go and be great, and we'll see you next time.